Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Lucha Underground Luchador Spotlight. We are talking, I believe, because he was originally supposed to be Big Rick's cousin, and they did kind of play on that relationship a little bit in the middle and later parts of the middle of the season. John, what do you think about the Mac? Well, just to be clear, we're not trying to, shatter kayfabe or anything, but this is really Mac in PWG. We've seen him work a few PWG matches, and he's always been entertaining. So, John, go ahead and take the reins.
Yeah, the Mac to me is a very entertaining performer. He's got a charisma about him that I really gravitate towards. What I love best about the Mac is his uniqueness in look and the ability that kind of accompanies it because it's kind of a juxtaposition, you know what I mean? Like when you see a guy of that size doing the things that he does, or of that build doing the things that he does and taking to the air and this, that, and the other, it's just a really cool sight. So yeah, I think the Mac's a very exciting prospect.
To be blunt, he kind of strikes me as a less intimidating, more fun black version of 2006 Samoa Joe.
There you go. Yeah, I'd say that's a good assessment of the situation.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Mac's first season of Lucha Underground. He was introduced relatively late. I want to say middle of the season sometime when the trios titles were getting introduced. The first time that we saw him, Big Rick introduced him and Killshot, and that was the point that Dario Cueto actually introduced, hey, I'm having introducing a new title, the trios titles, and I'm going to have a tournament to crown the first champions. You guys are in. And it was basically just Cueto trying to not get beaten and mobbed and possibly robbed. Actually, almost definitely robbed.
Exactly, because Big Rick first came in with Killshot and the Mac is almost to serve as his kind of muscle because
Right.
he asked Cueto, like, I've been hearing talk is that you ordered the hit on me. And, that's how Cueto worms his way out. It's very interesting how things all kind of begin. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think after that whole segment, we immediately just go right into trios tournament. Did they lose their first match or did they make it to the finals?
they made it to the finals, you remember? They were just the
That's
first
right.
team. Or no,
Yeah,
yeah.
that because the first elimination in that match was Killshot pinning Tejano thanks to Davari.
Exactly, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And then, of course, they did end up losing to what would we eventually know as Team Havoc. And even though they didn't necessarily win the trios titles, they looked strong, and all three guys really got established. Specifically, the two that hadn't already been around, Killshot and the Mac, were really just kind of established as really strong in-ring workers because there was also a triples threat match, and it was the Mac, Cage, and Son of Havoc. And right there, that was kind of the moment where you were like, "Oh my God, this guy's amazing."
Exactly. Yeah, the Mac really got to show everybody what he could do in the context of that triple threat, and you really saw a star kind of emerge for the Mac. So yeah, great stuff.
Absolutely. So then after that whole, trios title angle, we go and the Mac kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. Not too much. He didn't just completely disappear. And then we did have the moment where he was offering to be the third man on a team with Davari and Cage, and Big Rick, and then Cage comes into the locker room and just destroys him, throws him up against the locker, throws him into the locker, makes the whole set of lockers fall over with him on it. Yeah, Cage just destroyed Mac there, but that was the catalyst to their feud.
Exactly. And it was a really well done segment. I mean, you and I have gushed over it even now. I loved how it was shot. I loved how it was executed. And yeah, this is the Mac's really first big like vendetta, on his own. That doesn't necessarily involve his family, albeit directly. And yeah, just him and Cage are off to the races from this point.
Yeah, exactly. And they had a few matches. There was one Aztec Medallion match where the Mac did some kind of a splash from the top rope to the outside onto Cage while the other two competitors were in the ring, and that allowed I want to say it was Sexy Star to get the winning pin over Marty the Moth Martinez. I'm pretty sure it was in that match.
Yeah, I believe you're correct. Yes.
Yeah. So that just really pissed off Cage, and that led to them having a couple matches. The Mac won both of their matches. The second one by a really quick, cheap roll up, and then the big kind of culmination was on Ultima Lucha Part One, Falls Count Anywhere match, and of course we know that the Mac kind of got curb stomped through a cinder block.
Yeah, it was a rough night for the Mack. Comes up short in his very first Ultima Lucha, but he had some great spots. He did like an Exploder T-Bone, like in the stands, like on the hardwood stands. He did the
The
stunner
stunner
after picking
spot.
up
Oh
the air.
my god, that was so good.
I think he did a splash through a table at one point too to Cage. A Cage kicked out of, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Mack really brought the fight. It just really wasn't enough. And yeah, now we arrive here at what could potentially be, his second season and how much of a splash he can make there.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, let's talk about what we think the Mac can do in season two. And to me, I kind of see him in a very similar place as Johnny Mundo, where I don't really have any big, like, long term overarching plans for him. I just want to see him in the ring with everybody.
I definitely agree with you. The Mac is so much fun again to watch, and he's such a unique performer. However, what I find interesting, and I guess I'll say it here because I know we're going to be doing Kill Shot on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. Is it's funny because the Mac I feel like got more direction than Kill Shot did after the trios tournament in this season because of the feud with Cage, and I think he did very well in that role. So to me, I would have him competing against a lot of people, but I'd say towards the middle of the second season, I would start a storyline. But it may make more sense to do it in the beginning, where Killshot comes to the Mac. He says, "Look, our family's been weakened. Big Rick is gone." Knowing Lucha Underground, they could come up with some reason that would keep in line with their mythos and everything for the temple of why Big Rick's not there. And he says, "Well, I'm taking over the family operation now, and I want to put my own crew together." And then the Mac becomes a part of a new trio led by Killshot, because I would love to give Killshot some direction too, while still keeping the Mac sympathetic. I would find that the Mac may disagree with Killshot's methods. There's dissension in the group, and ultimately it kind of leads to the Mac versus Killshot at Ultima Lucha. So I still want to do the same family story I had when Big Rick was in play, just change the players from Big Rick to Killshot. That's my big plan for the Mac in season two,
I
and he
really
would
like
win.
that. I really like that idea. I was even going to suggest that maybe we could do, maybe the Mac accuses Killshot. I mean, look at the guy's name, Killshot. Maybe he accuses Killshot of being the reason that Big Rick isn't around anymore. Maybe he kind of has some suspicions that maybe Killshot killed or had killed Big Rick.
See, now I really like that idea because it pretty much takes where I was going with it, but it turns the volume way up. Because I was
And
just gonna, yeah.
especially, and here is another thing that we'll talk about on Saturday. Spoiler alert: Saturday is going to be our Killshot commentary. What if Killshot becomes a Dario Cueto hired gun?
I like that. I like that. See, because the funny thing is to me, Ashton, and it's weird because it feels odd knowing that we're going to be doing the kill shot commentary Saturday, and it seems like I'm more concerned about giving kill shot direction. I like what Mac did in season one. I know it seems like in past commentaries it'd be like, oh, I really like what they did the first season, but this is what I'd like them to do the second season, and I kind of want to keep that same vibe that he had going in the first season. I just think kill shot. I just kind of want him to be the catalyst for it. So yeah, I think whether he's a hired gun for Cueto, he took out Rick. Really loved that idea, by the way, because my motivation was going to be far more simplistic and just be like, oh, Big Rick, he follows the money and he just decided the money was no longer good here. But having it be more sinister like that, I think
You
adds
know what
depth
though,
and
John?
meat to the story.
I think that my problem with that explanation is that right at the end of the season we saw that Cueto was going to start paying Rick big money again.
That is true. And that is true. So yeah, I think your way makes more sense, even from a continuity standpoint.
Yeah, and I
So
think
I
that you
love
could
that
even
idea.
make a big villain out of Killshot by having it turn out that yeah, he took Big Rick out because he wanted that spot as Cueto's hired gun. He wanted to be making that money, and he knew that with the sort of renewed interest that Cueto took in Big Rick, that he would be able to take Big Rick out and then kind of slip in there as taking Big Rick's spot under Cueto.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reason why I'm so concerned with Killshot's development, and I'm glad you've like presented this idea, is because I just see the Mac as potentially being very dependent on Killshot in the second season. And we've always talked about in WWE and in other contexts, your babyface is only as good as the heel they're working off of and how much sympathy they're able to generate. I think if you make Killshot this really sinister guy, that's going to make the Mac very sympathetic, and it's going to make his Ultima Lucha 2 moment even sweeter. Because again, I would have him go over. And I just think it would be so much better, so much more potent if you have Killshot be this legitimate, vile human being. So yeah, let's do it, man. Sounds
You know
amazing
what
to
I
me.
think would be really cool?
What's that?
If Big Rick maybe tried to go after Killshot earlier on in the season, like between episodes 5 and 15 or something like that, and
Right.
he just couldn't get the job done because Cueto just has too much manpower, man. Like we're talking about if this happens, he would have Killshot, he would have Chavo, he would have Cisco, he would have Cortez, possibly Blue Demon Jr. There's just too many people on that side of the fence for you to go, bursting in there and trying to take everybody out.
Yeah,
Or
you're
even
not gonna
even
run.
any one guy out even would be too difficult because everyone else would have his back. So what if Big Rick tried to assemble a little army of his own?
That would have been
I said
so
Big
cool.
Rick. I'm sorry, not Big Rick. The Mac. What if the Mac tried to assemble a little army of his own?
And see, that's I was kind of playing with that idea too when I originally said like crew starts his the crew sorry Killshot starts his own little crew, his own little operation, and the Mac just becomes a dissenting voice within that operation. And yeah, I like this idea of kind of like a factionalism going on. The Mac saying, well,
Yeah,
look, these ideals aren't aligned with mine. I'm gonna go with people that I respect, that I trust, and we're gonna do things our way.
yeah,
And yeah, you could have a really and see that what I love about this storyline that you and I are kind of working on together here is I really think it gives the mid card something to do because
right.
I see Mil Muertes, Pentagon, Puma, Phoenix, Cuerno, guys like that really dominating the season. And the guys that make up the underbelly of Lucha Underground, I feel like not necessarily going to be directionless because that would be an insult to the promotion, and they're just great at using everybody. But I want to give them a sense of purpose too, so that they could potentially elevate into that spot in future seasons. And I think this is a great way to do it when you have everybody a part of something like this big.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that vision.
I think it would be cool if we could get like Sexy Star and maybe like a post Team Havoc, Son of Havoc teaming up with the Mac, and those three maybe going after the trios titles, trying to get them back from the Disciples of Death, and then maybe if they win them, we could have Killshot be like, no, 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 you're not getting away with that, and then we can do like a modified version of the crew where it's Killshot, Cortez, and Cisco going after the trios titles.
See, and what I like about this, Ashton, I really love where you're going right now because to me, I think it raises the profile of the trios titles. Because I'm not gonna lie, one question I have for season two, outside of like all the big overarching questions we talk about from week to week, is how are they going to handle the trios division? That's a very intriguing division to kind of have to handle, and I think your idea not only raises the profile of the trios title, but the raising of that profile isn't forced because I notice with WWE when their tag division is in a slump, as does happen every few years, they just throw teams together.
Right.
Whereas I feel like these teams are coming together because of a legitimate, a genuine story, a
Yeah.
genuine cause.
Yep.
So I think you raise the profile, but you don't fall into the pitfall of making these guys directionless and, oh, you're all together just cause. So I really like that.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm all spent as far as ideas go.
I
I mean, I'm
sign on to
sure that
your
we could
idea.
sit around for 20 more minutes and think of other random ideas, but I don't think it's going to get much better than that factional warfare stuff. I love that. I'm a huge sucker for that kind of stuff.
Oh, me too. Me too. And I just feel like the way you presented it and just like how you and I came together, I'm spent too. If you want to call it here, that's the best we're gonna do for the Mac. And I hope new Spum, I believe 55, liked our idea because we know he loves the Mac to death. So I hope he liked what we did here. I'm good.
Absolutely. And again, we will be talking again about Killshot again, more even on Saturday, and probably sticking with the same kind of idea that we had here, and then just kind of expanding on it a little bit for him. So we will see you all on Saturday for our Killshot Luchador Spotlight.